The day my divorce was officially finalized, I bought a one-way train ticket back to the town where I grew up. In my pocket, I had my phone, my wallet with my ID, and a debit card holding a balance that was barely enough to be considered a starting point. That was the sum total of what I had to show for the last several years of my life. The housekeeper from our old home called me just before I left, her voice hesitant, telling me that I still had a few boxes of things left in the study. I told her to just toss them, that I didn't want any of it, that it was all just dead weight from a life that was no longer mine. Before hanging up, she added, almost as an afterthought, that my daughter was crying and asking for her daddy. I felt a familiar, dull ache in my chest, but my voice was steady when I replied, "She'll have a new daddy soon enough. The one she's been so obsessed with this whole time." My daughter, she was the spitting image of her mother. They even fell in love with the same man. There was a time when that fact felt like a knife twisting in my gut, a constant, painful reminder of my own inadequacy. I used to lie awake at night wondering why that man couldn't have been me, what I was lacking that made me so easy to look past. Now I just felt a profound sense of resignation. If she doesn't love me, she doesn't. It is what it is. Just as the train began to lurch forward, I held the phone to my ear for one last thing. "Tell her not to worry," I said, my voice flat. "I'll never bother her again for the rest of my life." With that, I ended the call, powered down the phone, and methodically removed the SIM card, snapping it in two before tossing it in the trash can by my seat. From that moment forward, the sprawling city and everyone in it had absolutely nothing to do with me anymore. Seated next to me in the worn train car was a small boy, perhaps around my own daughter's age, who watched my every move with wide, cautious eyes. I used to adore children, their unfiltered joy and boundless curiosity, but the past few years had scoured that affection from me. Now I found I didn't love much of anything at all. The little boy remained remarkably quiet and well-behaved for the entire journey, a stark contrast to his father, who spent the whole time glued to his phone, his voice a rising tide of angry shouts and curses that filled our small space. I put on my headphones, turning the volume up high enough to drown him out, and closed my eyes, hoping for some small measure of peace. I don't know how much time had passed, but I was roused from a light doze by a gentle tug on my sleeve. I opened my eyes to see the little boy looking at me, his lower lip caught between his teeth in a gesture of deep anxiety. "Mister," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. "My dad's gone. Can you help me find him?" I glanced over and saw that the aisle seat in our row of 3 was now conspicuously empty. Unsure of what had transpired, my first instinct was to find a conductor and the train's security personnel. A brief investigation revealed the grim truth. The boy's father had disembarked at a previous stop. Witnesses said he kept looking back nervously before he left, as if he were afraid his own son might try to follow him. To put it plainly, the child had been abandoned. The news spread through the train car like a virus, and soon a low hum of chatter erupted. Passengers began to gossip with a thoughtless lack of restraint, speaking loudly right in front of the boy about how heartless his father was, how pitiful the poor child was. Through it all, the boy just sat there in his seat, perfectly still, his small hands folded in his lap. He didn't cry or throw a tantrum. He just stared straight ahead with an unnerving stillness. After a moment of contemplation, I pulled out my ID and showed it to the transit officer, giving him my home address and contact information. And so, when I finally stepped off the train in my hometown, in addition to my phone, my ID, and a nearly depleted bank card, I also had a small, silent child trailing in my wake. I officially began my new life back in the town that held all my earliest memories. The little house my grandfather had left me was modest, with a small yard that had become completely overgrown with weeds in my absence. I spent the first week clearing it out, tilling the soil, and planting rows of simple fruits and vegetables. I found an old photograph of my grandpa, his kind eyes smiling out from the faded print, and had it framed, hanging it in the most prominent spot in the living room. I gave the little boy a name, Noah, and navigated the bureaucratic maze to file the necessary paperwork and get him officially registered as my son. From that day on, my official file, which had long been just a single, lonely page, finally had a second entry. Noah never gave me a moment of trouble. He was a perpetually serious child, watching me with a solemn, straight face as if he were trying to unravel the mysteries of the universe. He seemed to understand everything without needing it explained, an old soul trapped in a tiny body. He was only 4 years old, but when I came down with a bad flu, he would stand on a stool in the kitchen, carefully stirring a pot of porridge for me. My thoughts would inevitably drift to my biological child, the little heiress, Maya. She was a girl who, if she desired to go skiing, would be gifted an entire mountain resort, or if she craved a piece of candy, would find herself the owner of a whole candy factory. The two children were from different worlds entirely. One day, Noah asked me why I had adopted him, calling himself a burden in a small, quiet voice. I gently stroked his soft hair and answered him honestly. "Because I was very lonely," I said. "So, can you keep me company from now on?" He looked at me for a long, silent moment, his dark eyes searching my face before nodding with a fierce determination. "Okay," he said. "I'll stay with you forever." The days bled into weeks, and the weeks into years, each one passing with a quiet, comfortable rhythm. Noah started kindergarten. Noah started elementary school. Noah became the class president. And then, one afternoon, Noah got into a fight. I was genuinely surprised when I received the call from his teacher. Noah was a good, obedient child, exceptionally mature for his age. He wasn't the type to get into a physical altercation. He barely gave the other children the time of day, dismissing them with a quiet sigh as being too childish. I rushed to the school, my heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and concern. His teacher met me at the main gate, a helpless expression on her face. It turned out the child Noah had fought with was a new transfer student who had just started that very day. All I wanted to know was why they had fought. The teacher gave me a strange, hesitant look. "What is it?" I pressed. She took a deep breath before explaining. The new student, her name is Maya, said that Noah was trying to steal her dad. I stopped dead in my tracks, the world narrowing to a single point. "What did you say?" the teacher continued, her voice soft. "Noah keeps a small photo of you and him in his pencil case. Maya saw it and, well, she told everyone that Noah was shameless for trying to steal her father." I didn't say another word, just followed the teacher silently down the hallway. When we reached the office, the door was slightly ajar. As the teacher pushed it open, she looked back at me and added, "By the way, Maya's mother is already here." I stood frozen in the doorway, my first glance immediately seeking out Noah, who was sitting quietly in a corner, his head bent over a workbook as he focused on his homework. Seeing that he seemed unharmed, a wave of relief washed over me. In my peripheral vision, I saw the little girl who had been in the midst of a tantrum suddenly go still. Her eyes lit up as she saw me, and she came running toward me on her short, sturdy legs, her arms outstretched. "Daddy!" she cried. I bent down and caught her, but not to embrace her. Instead, I gently but firmly pushed her away from me. "You've got the wrong person, sweetie," I said, managing a slight, polite smile. I then looked up, my gaze meeting the eyes of the woman standing inside the room. "Hello, ma'am," I said, my voice cool and formal. I'm Noah's father. I never thought I would see Clara again. The world is an immense place, and if you truly do not wish to encounter someone, you can usually manage to avoid them. Maya was now wailing at the top of her lungs, pointing an accusatory finger at me and sobbing about how I had abandoned her. Across the room, Noah was gripping his pencil so tightly that his knuckles were white. I knew he was rapidly losing his patience. Clara just stared at me, her face a mask of unreadable emotion, saying nothing. I knew she was waiting for my reaction, waiting to see how I would play this. "Noah," I said, my voice calm as I walked over and packed his school bag for him. "Can you head home first?" Noah nodded without a single moment of hesitation, slinging the bag over his shoulder and walking out of the office without a backward glance. The moment he was gone, Maya expertly wiped away her crocodile tears, scrambled over to me, and wrapped her arms around my leg. "Daddy, please don't be mad, okay?" she pleaded, her voice saccharine sweet. I know I was wrong. I bent down again, smiling faintly as I patted her head. Then, I looked up at Clara. "Clara," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "Can we talk? Alone?" The story of Clara and me, when I really thought about it, wasn't much of a story at all. When my grandfather was a young man, he had done an enormous favor for the Sinclair family. The legend, as it was told, was that he had saved Clara's grandfather from a violent kidnapping. As a result, for years, the Sinclairs would always send lavish gifts to our small home during the holidays as a sign of their enduring gratitude. After I was accepted into college in the city, my grandfather, who was getting older and found travel increasingly difficult, began to worry. He was concerned that I wouldn't be able to adjust to the overwhelming pace of the big city on my own. So he made a call to the Sinclairs and asked them if they would mind looking out for me. That year, I walked out of the train station burdened with bags and saw Clara for the first time, leaning against a sleek, expensive car, casually scrolling through her phone. She was so radiant, so effortlessly dazzling, that I felt an almost physical urge to use every beautiful word I had ever learned just to describe the sight of her. Falling for her was the most natural, inevitable thing in the world. I was keenly aware that we came from two entirely different universes, and I never allowed myself to expect anything from her. The moon hangs high and untouchable in the night sky. I was content just to be bathed in its soft light as I passed by on the ground below. Clara and I ended up attending the same university. She would occasionally bring me things on behalf of her family, small tokens of their continued goodwill. Over time, we reached a point where we would at least offer a polite nod when we saw each other on campus. It was later that I heard about the epic love story between Clara and her childhood sweetheart, Ethan. The love stories of people like them, the main characters, are always fraught with drama and intense emotion. They were in a constant cycle of blissful sweetness, followed by explosive fights, dramatic breakups, and passionate reconciliations. I was merely a spectator on the sidelines, feeling a quiet pang of melancholy now and then. In my junior year, I began an internship at a company located far from the campus, which meant I had a long and grueling commute every day. I ran into Clara one afternoon, and she casually asked what I had been up to. I told her about my internship and the commute. Not long after that conversation, I received a call from Clara's grandfather. He informed me that they owned an empty house near my office and insisted that I should simply move in. It's difficult to refuse the kindness of an elder, especially one to whom my family was indebted, and I was genuinely grateful for the offer. After moving in, however, I quickly realized that the house was filled with the lingering traces of Clara's life. My conscience wasn't clear about staying there, so I confined all of my belongings to the small guest room, doing my best to minimize my presence and intrude as little as possible. Until that night. I had been working late, and when I finally arrived back at the house, I found Clara passed out on the sofa, clearly drunk. I wanted to maintain my distance, to simply retreat to my room, but I was worried she would get cold in the drafty living room. I found a light blanket in a nearby closet and gently went to cover her with it. As I leaned over her, Clara's eyes fluttered open, and she looked at me, her gaze unfocused. I thought she was going to ask what I was doing in her house, to demand that I leave. But instead, she reached up, pulled me down, and in the ensuing haze, we crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. To be perfectly honest, I don't remember much about the chaotic details of that night anymore. The mind has a way of protecting itself from trauma. When something is too painful to bear, you begin to forget. In my entire life, I have only ever been with one person, one single time. And throughout that night, she was calling out someone else's name. Come to think of it, Clara has only ever said my name once. It was the day we first met at the train station entrance. She had looked me up and down with a cool, appraising glance. "Leo?" she had asked. "That's me," I had replied. That first meeting, it's a profound shame that things could never stay that simple. The campus was quiet, emptied of students after the last bell. Clara and I stood at the end of a long hallway, a vibrant patch of green from the school's courtyard visible behind us. "You wanted to talk to me alone?" Clara asked, her arms crossed over her chest. "Whatever you want to say, just say it." Since she had opened the door, I didn't hesitate. "What have you been telling Maya these past few years?" A flicker of something, annoyance, guilt, crossed her face. "What?" she asked. "We've been divorced for 4 years, Clara. For 4 long years, I've kept my promise to you. I stayed away completely. I sent the child support payments to your account on time every single month. Children have short memories. Besides, Maya never really liked me as her father to begin with. If someone wasn't constantly reminding her of my existence, there's no way she would still remember me, let alone have any sort of manufactured feelings for me." Clara turned her head away, staring out the window. "I didn't tell her anything," she said, her voice low. "It was my grandfather who kept reminding her." I pressed on. "Then why transfer her to a school here, in this town?" She paused for a long moment before answering. "She kept begging to come find you. I couldn't stop her." Of course. Maya was the apple of everyone's eye in the Sinclair family. Whatever she wanted, she got. Even Clara, her own mother, had no principles when it came to her daughter. I lowered my eyes, thinking quietly for a moment. After a while, I looked up and offered a small, weary smile. "It doesn't matter," I said. "Once her expectations are inevitably crushed, she'll want to go back on her own. I've never been a particularly likable person. Once Maya spends enough time with me, she'll realize her memory has been romanticizing a version of me that never existed. In reality, I'm still that same unlikable, annoying person who only serves to drag down her social standing, her biological father." After moving back to my hometown, I opened a small, unassuming restaurant to make a living. I couldn't handle a large volume of customers by myself, so I intentionally limited the number of patrons each night. Slowly, through word of mouth, it started to gain a local reputation and was eventually hyped up by tourists and bloggers into a trendy, must-visit spot. The 18-year-old version of me, Leo, wanted to be a 6-figure elite, so he majored in computer science because it seemed like the easiest path to making a lot of money. The 28-year-old version of me just wants to run this little shop, less than 1,000 square feet in total, and live out the rest of his life in peace. Ever since Maya transferred schools, her family's driver would bring her to my restaurant every day after she was dismissed. She's a smart kid. She only showed her bratty, entitled side on that first day we were reunited. After that, she was on her best behavior. Clara rarely showed up herself. Most of the time, the person accompanying Maya was the silent, stone-faced driver. I don't know what the Sinclairs are thinking. If they value Maya so much, how can they be comfortable leaving her, a little girl, alone in this remote, small town? I didn't kick her out. Despite everything, she is the only blood relative I have left in this world. I once stayed awake for 3 days and nights straight to care for her when she had a dangerously high fever. I once cut up my hands badly while trying to carve a wooden toy she had seen in a magazine and desperately wanted. I have to admit, people are selfish by nature. When I did those things for her, I genuinely didn't expect anything in return. But when all I received back was her disdain, her resentment, and her thinly veiled disgust, I was, to some extent, deeply hurt. When she was very little, she was incredibly clingy with me. She had to have me sleeping in a chair next to her crib, had to have me carry her everywhere we went. I relied on her innocent dependence on me to get through the countless slights and subtle injustices I endured living with the Sinclairs. But as she started developing her own consciousness, as she learned to walk and learned to say no, she slowly began to dislike me. It was because I would stop her from eating too much candy before dinner, and I would be strict with her when she acted out in public. Children, you know, they don't distinguish between right and wrong. All she knew was that I was the one who often restricted her freedom. So naturally, she didn't want to be close to me anymore. This continued until the day Clara took her out to play. When they came home that evening, Maya stood in the middle of the living room, her hands on her hips, and announced defiantly, "I don't want you to be my daddy anymore. I want Uncle Ethan to be my daddy. You're not worthy of being my dad. Get out! This is my house." Noah once asked me in private if it was okay for him not to be friends with Maya. He said he didn't like her. "Of course," I told him. I didn't really care one way or the other, but I was a little curious. "Why don't you like her?" Noah was a remarkably mature kid. He rarely expressed a clear dislike for anyone. Most of the time, he was just quietly indifferent. "She hurt you," Noah said, his tone flat and serious. "You're sad every time you see her." I froze, surprised by his perception. "She knows you're sad," he continued, "but she keeps showing up in front of you anyway." As he spoke, Noah lowered his head, looking a little dejected himself. "Can I beat her up?" he asked. "I can't beat up that adult yet, but I can beat Maya." He thought for a moment. "Dad, can you sign me up for martial arts classes? I'll get really strong. Dad, I'll protect you." I agreed to sign Noah up for martial arts. He trained with an incredible, focused intensity. His instructor once told me, "Your Noah can handle more physical strain than a lot of the older kids in the class." I remembered Clara once pointing her finger at my face and sneering, "A man like you who could ever love you? You were wrong, Clara. Grandpa loved me, Noah loves me. And now, finally, I love myself." Clara would show up occasionally, always looking worn out and exhausted from the long drive. She would sit in a quiet corner of my restaurant for a bit, order a couple of simple dishes, and then take Maya home after she finished eating. The neighbors were all buzzing with questions, asking if Clara was trying to win me back. They had no idea she was my ex-wife. I would always just laugh it off. "She's not blind," I'd say. "Why would she be interested in me? She's just here to pick up her kid, not to pursue me." In the past, I would have endlessly tried to guess the motive behind every single one of Clara's actions. But now, I have zero curiosity about her. Whether she comes or goes, I truly don't care. I sometimes find myself wondering when Maya will finally get tired of this boring, one-sided game of trying to win her father's affection. She's been in this small town, a place with no aquarium, no amusement park, no big, fancy malls, for nearly 3 months. Perhaps it's a flaw buried deep in everyone's bones that you only treasure what you can't have. Even children aren't immune to it. The colder and more distant I was to her, the more she tried to stick to me. She often had a look of profound disappointment on her face. It would appear when I was gently holding Noah's hand, when I was bending down to fix Noah's collar, or when I mysteriously brought out a special little dessert from the kitchen that was just for Noah. But whenever I happened to look at her, she would immediately shake off the loneliness and give me a bright, sweet smile. People's feelings change with their emotions. When I adored this child, I would feel terrible for half a day if she got a tiny scrape on her knee. But now, even knowing that she's putting on a brave face to hide her sadness, I don't feel anything at all. In fact, I even find myself thinking, why hasn't she left yet? Having her here is really, really annoying. I don't hate her. I just don't like her anymore. Early summer arrived, warm and heavy with the scent of blooming jasmine. After the end of school ceremony, summer vacation officially began. I opened the restaurant as usual that day, and by the time I closed up for the night, Maya hadn't shown up. I just figured she had finally grown tired of her silly game and decided to go back to being the precious little miss she was meant to be. But when I got home that evening, I found her sitting obediently on the stone steps outside my little yard, holding a delicate, ornate cake box in her lap. Clara was with her. A few expensive-looking gift bags sat on the ground beside them. The mother and daughter's stunning looks drew admiring glances from passers-by, but they were focused only on the empty road in front of them. "Mommy, when is Daddy coming home?" Maya asked, her voice small. "Soon," Clara replied. "We came all this way to celebrate his birthday with him, and we brought all these presents. Will Daddy be happy?" "He will," Clara assured her. Hearing this, Maya pursed her lips, a look of eager anticipation on her face. She was wearing a formal little dress, clearly dressed up for the occasion, but the weather was muggy and hot, and perhaps she had been waiting for a long time because her forehead was beaded with sweat. Or maybe she wasn't hot, just a little nervous and excited. I stopped a short distance away, watching them. Noah, however, didn't pause at all. He walked right up to the mother and daughter and said crisply, "You're mistaken. Dad's birthday isn't today." "You're lying." Maya, who rarely confronted Noah directly anymore, jumped to her feet. She knew how much I cared for Noah and didn't want to annoy me, so she usually tried to avoid him. But this time, she retorted loudly, "Daddy's birthday is today. He has the same birthday as me. I would never forget." Clara saw me then and stood up as well. She didn't speak, but there was a faint, almost desperate look of hope on her face. "Leo," she said, my name sounding clumsy and unfamiliar on her tongue. "Happy birthday." I walked over, pulling my keys from my pocket to unlock the yard gate, and looked at her calmly. "I forgot to tell you," I said, my voice even. "I celebrate a different birthday now." After a brief thought, I added, "But I guess little things like that don't really concern you, do they?" I used to love my birthday. My grandpa was a sentimental old man who was a real stickler for tradition. Every year on my birthday, without fail, he'd prepare a huge meal, a beautiful cake, and a thoughtful, carefully chosen gift. It was always just the two of us at home, but it never felt lonely. His health wasn't good, so he couldn't travel long distances easily. But after I went to college and couldn't be home for my birthday, he would insist on flying all the way to my city every single year, just to blow out the candles and eat a slice of cake with me. When Grandpa was alive, I was never lonely. That year, on my birthday, Grandpa flew over to be with me as usual. At the time, Clara was in her 3rd trimester, pregnant with Maya. But she barely ever looked at me directly. We lived under the same roof, but she treated me as if I were invisible, a piece of furniture. I could almost understand her feelings back then. That night between us had been a mistake from the very start. I had even thought that since Clara was drunk, I could just slip away after it was over, before she fully came to. If I didn't say anything, no one in the world would ever know what had happened between us. But in reality, Clara had tormented me for the entire night, calling out another man's name. Before I could recover enough to leave, the front door was opened by Clara's grandfather, who had decided to pay a surprise visit. And so, things began to spin completely out of control, and there was no turning back. Clara's grandfather wasn't interested in the messy love lives of young people. He didn't care if Clara was in love with someone else, if the Sinclairs were happy with me as a son-in-law, or if I even wanted to marry Clara in the first place. All he cared about was that he couldn't let me down, and more importantly, he couldn't let my grandfather down. "Leo, I've already told your grandfather about you and Clara," he had told me, his tone leaving no room for debate. "His health isn't good, and you don't want him to worry about you, right? I can see that you're not without feelings for Clara. You're a good kid. I know you didn't want to ruin things between Clara and Ethan, but what's done is done. Ethan can't tolerate something like this. It's over for him and Clara. But you and Clara, you still have endless possibilities. Don't you want to give it a try?" I have to admit, for a fleeting moment, I was tempted. But before I could make a choice, Clara discovered she was pregnant. The morning sickness was so severe there was no way to hide it. And just like that, I had no way out. I had no choice but to bite the bullet and endure Clara's resentful stares as I entered into a marriage that was doomed from the very start. Sometimes, I really hate my own tendency to just suck it up and make peace with terrible situations. I had to pretend to be happy and deeply in love in front of the elders, and I had to pretend not to care about her coldness in front of Clara. But the truth was, I wasn't happy. I was miserable. It was painful watching her suffer through the morning sickness, the swelling, the constant cramps. It was painful being looked down on by the rest of the Sinclair family, painful being hated by Clara, and painful being mocked and taunted by Ethan. I endured it all and somehow made it to another birthday. Grandpa was so happy. He not only had a gift for me, but he also had one for his future great-granddaughter. He said he was going to stay for a while this time, that he wouldn't feel at ease until my wife had the baby and had fully recovered. But Grandpa never got to see Maya born. On my birthday, I took him out to a fancy restaurant for dinner. There he saw with his own eyes Ethan and Clara holding hands across a candle-lit table, kissing sweetly. Then he clutched his chest, had a massive heart attack, and was rushed to the hospital. I think my deep-seated resentment toward Clara really started in that moment. I wasn't the one who made the initial mistake. I was the biggest victim in this whole sordid affair. So, why did I have to be the one to suffer all of the devastating consequences? Grandpa was taken straight into the emergency room as soon as we arrived at the hospital. Not long after, the Sinclairs arrived in a flurry of panic. Clara's grandfather slapped her hard across the face, right there in the hallway in front of me. But I didn't feel any urge to stop him anymore. I just stared hopefully at the closed operating room doors, praying that the doctor would come out and bring good news. It wasn't long, though, before the light above the door went out. A tired-looking doctor came out and told me with profound regret to hurry and say my final goodbyes. How ridiculous, say my goodbyes. My grandpa, who just an hour ago was holding my hand and telling me with a proud smile about the little wooden toys he had carved for his great-granddaughter. And now I had to say goodbye to him? Clara's grandfather was sobbing uncontrollably, saying over and over again how sorry he was, to me and to my grandpa. I couldn't hear anything. The world had gone silent. I just stared blankly, gripping Grandpa's cold hand, afraid that if I let go, I'd never be able to touch him again. "I know you're not happy in your marriage," Grandpa rasped, lying on the sterile hospital bed, looking at me with unbearable heartache in his eyes. "You just don't say anything because you don't want me to worry." "I'm sorry, Leo," he said, his voice fading. "Grandpa can't be with you anymore." He cried out in pain, choking on the words. "Leo, what am I going to do? What if someone bullies you? What if no one is good to you? Who can I entrust you to?" "Don't worry, I'll take good care of Leo," Clara's grandfather swore through his tears. He then pulled a numb Clara over, demanding that she make a promise as well. Clara knelt by the bed and said to my grandpa, her voice hollow, "Grandpa, don't worry. I'll take good care of him from now on." Grandpa looked at her with clouded, dying eyes and gave a sad, faint smile. "The biggest regret of my life," he whispered, "was asking you all to take care of him in the first place." He clutched my hand tighter, his eyes filled with a deep, profound reluctance to leave me. But in the end, he was gone. He left this world full of anger, regret, and a sorrow that I knew would haunt me forever. Clutching my aching chest, in the midst of a complete collapse and overwhelming despair, I got a call from another department in the hospital. Clara had gone into premature labor. I was rushed back to the maternity ward, signed a pile of papers in a daze, and waited for Maya's birth. Maybe Clara felt a sliver of guilt. After Grandpa died, she rarely saw Ethan anymore, and focused more of her attention on our daughter. She still didn't talk to me much, but at least we could be civil with each other, like polite, distant strangers. Ethan went abroad, supposedly heartbroken, and rarely contacted Clara. I thought to myself, this is it. This is my life now. Stuck in an unhappy marriage with a wife who doesn't love me and a cute, albeit demanding, daughter. But then Ethan came back. And as soon as he did, he captured all of Clara and Maya's attention. The little bit of familial affection I might have been slowly building, and the love I had never once received, Ethan took it all without a second thought. On Maya's birthday, he announced that he had a huge surprise planned for her. So, Maya abandoned me without a moment's hesitation and ran to him. Clara told me that Ethan still didn't like me, so they wouldn't be taking me with them. She promised she would bring Maya back before sunset to celebrate my birthday with me as well. But that day, they never came back. Not even by midnight. Clara eventually called and said that Maya was exhausted from playing all day and had fallen asleep. She was afraid of waking her, so they were staying out for the night. In the silent darkness of that empty house, I sat by the window for a long, long time. I remembered my grandpa's last words, how he held my hand and sadly asked, "What if no one is good to you?" "Grandpa, I don't like birthdays anymore." Out of some lingering sense of politeness, I let the mother and daughter into the house and poured them each a glass of water. Noah went to the cabinet, took out the wall calendar, and pointed to a date in the following month that was circled in bright red ink. "This is Dad's real birthday," he announced matter-of-factly. Maya looked at me, lost and anxious, her eyes wet with unshed tears. She wanted to speak, but didn't seem to dare. They were so much alike, that mother and daughter. From their looks to their mannerisms, they were practically identical. I guess I just contributed a single gene to the mix, because there wasn't a single trace of me in Maya. Clara piled the expensive gifts she had brought into an empty corner of the room. "This was my mistake," she said softly. Next time you don't have to prepare anything," I cut her off, my voice quiet but firm. "Next time you don't have to come at all." Clara's back was to me, and I saw her body go stiff. After a long moment of silence, she finally spoke. "You try to patch things up and make them last," she murmured, more to herself than to me. I felt the same way about our marriage. I thought, maybe Clara doesn't hate me that much. If I just try a little harder, maybe this marriage can get a little bit better. I desperately searched for tiny clues, for microscopic scraps of affection, and tried to gather them all together, hoping they could light the dark path ahead of me. And in the end, I did manage to light up the path. It was a path that was rugged, bumpy, and filled with a nauseating stench. Those tiny scraps of affection weren't nearly enough to keep me going, and they couldn't bring me any warmth. They only made me see more clearly just how utterly unbearable our marriage really was. I used to think that maybe your moral compass is just stronger than most, and you can't accept the idea of falling for any man other than Ethan, I continued, my voice devoid of emotion. Later, I realized, if your moral compass were really that strong, how could you have been so ambiguous and flirty with your first love when you knew you were already a married woman? The truth is, you're just selfish. Even now, when you want to get back together with me, you have to use the excuse that Maya misses me. But Clara, we've been divorced for 4 years. Clara swallowed hard, her voice hoarse when she finally spoke. So, I'm too late, right? It's not about being late, I sighed softly. It's just, all of that is in the past now. Clara, look forward. Clara raised a hand to cover her eyes. I know her pride. Seeing her like this, so vulnerable and defeated, didn't bring me any satisfaction at all. So I quietly stood up and left her to have her space. Before I could leave the room, she reached out and grabbed the fabric of my pant leg. She held on tight, her knuckles turning white, the veins on the back of her hand popping. She had lost a lot of weight, and there was an aura of defeat around her that she couldn't hide. I could hear her suppressed sobs, see her trembling shoulders. Don't come here again, I said softly. Go back to your own life. Take Maya with you. I gently pulled my pant leg free from her grasp and smoothed out the wrinkles. I forgot to tell you, my new birthday. It's our divorce anniversary. That was also the day I found Noah. He doesn't know his own birthday, and I wanted to change mine. So, we decided to make that day our new beginning. Just consider it an early birthday present from you. Give me some peace and quiet. Thank you, Clara. Clara left, and she took Maya with her. She didn't say a single word, but Maya must have guessed what was happening. Before she left, she clung to my leg, refusing to let go. She cried hysterically, her voice sharp and raw with panic. Her face was flushed a deep red, and she was sobbing so hard it looked like she might pass out. "I'm not going! Let go of me! I want my daddy!" she shrieked. She struggled desperately, begging me, "Daddy, please don't leave me, okay? I'll be good, I promise. I won't make you sad anymore, just don't send me away." She then turned on her mother. "Mommy, you're a liar! You said Daddy would forgive me! You big liar, you big meanie! Go away, Daddy! Daddy!" The car door slammed shut, cutting off her cries. I saw Maya pressed against the window, her face contorted with tears, pounding on the glass and looking at me with pitiful, pleading eyes. Clara yanked her back into the seat, held her down firmly, and ordered the driver in a low, sharp voice, "Go." She didn't look back at me, not even once. Noah stood beside me, looking up at me expectantly. "What is it?" I looked down and asked him gently. "They're not coming back, are they?" he asked. "No, they're not," I confirmed. "Daddy, are you sad?" he asked. His own small face etched with concern. I just smiled and ruffled his hair. "Noah, everything passes. Remember this. No matter how much pain you're in, as long as you keep moving forward and don't look back, you will always get through it. I've already walked a long way forward, but Clara and Maya, they seem to still be standing in the exact same place. It doesn't matter, though. We were never on the same path anyway, so there's no need for me to stop and wait for them." That night, I had a dream. In the dream, I was back a few years ago, right after Maya was born. I was so exhausted from taking care of her around the clock that I had fallen asleep on the sofa without even realizing it. In a daze, I felt Clara, home late from work, gently brush the hair from my forehead and give me a soft, gentle kiss. "Good night, honey," she whispered. At that moment in the dream, just as I had in reality, I truly believed that I could spend the rest of my life with her. Later, I came to understand. A lifetime is far too long. No one can walk the entire journey with you. She was just a passerby in my life, a bold, colorful, and ultimately painful stroke in my otherwise quiet and simple existence. But that's all it was. Clara, you and I. It was over a long, long time ago. After Clara and Leo divorced, a heavy gloom settled over the Sinclair household for a long time. The man no one had ever seemed to want was finally gone, but the expected sense of relief and liberation never came. Clara had always been a woman of few words. After the divorce, she spoke even less. She buried herself completely in her work, always on a business trip or on her way to one. Even on the rare occasions when she was home, she would usually crash the second her head hit the pillow, seeking oblivion in sleep. Maya, on the other hand, was happily oblivious to the shift in the atmosphere, always dragging the nanny around the huge, empty house, throwing a fit at the slightest inconvenience. But one day she suddenly stopped in the middle of the hallway and asked, "Where's Daddy?" The nanny didn't know what to say, so Maya took matters into her own hands. She looked under the dining room table, in all the closets, and in the sprawling garden. She searched for a long time but found nothing. Where is Daddy hiding? She wondered. Children are said to forget easily, but Maya was smart. She could clearly remember the last time she had seen Leo. That morning before he left for good, Leo had smiled, bent down, and stroked her head. "Maya," he had said, "Daddy has to go now. I used to wish you were a good, obedient little girl, but now I understand. You're not like me. You have the luxury of being willful. From now on, just be happy, okay?" At the time, Maya hadn't paid his words any mind. She was tired of his lectures and annoyed by his restrictive rules. But now, remembering those words, looking around the huge, silent mansion, and finding no trace of Leo anywhere, she finally, belatedly, began to feel a profound sense of sadness. That evening, when Clara came home, Maya uncharacteristically took her hand. "Mommy, did you and Daddy have a fight?" Clara stopped and looked down at her daughter. Maya's little face was scrunched up in a frown. "Can you please say sorry to Daddy and make up? I haven't seen him in forever. I want Daddy's sweet and sour ribs. Can we have them tonight?" Clara looked at the casual entitlement on Maya's face, her own expression blank at first, then slowly twisting into a cruel, unfamiliar smile. "I didn't have a fight with him," she said, her voice like ice. "We got a divorce. Do you know what a divorce is? It means he doesn't want you anymore. He's never going to see you again. No matter what you want to do, he's not going to care anymore. He abandoned you, understand?" She seemed to enjoy the look of pure fear that blossomed on Maya's face, and repeated, her voice laced with venom, "Maya, he doesn't want you. He's going to have other children, ones who are better behaved and cuter than you. You don't matter to him at all anymore." "You're lying. Daddy would never leave me," Maya screamed. "You're the one who got abandoned. Daddy said he loves me the most." "He lied to you," Clara laughed out loud, a harsh, ugly sound. "Maya, you got tricked. Loves you the most? You actually believe that garbage? Clara, what kind of nonsense are you telling a child?" An elder from the Sinclair family rushed over, scooping the hysterical Maya into their arms and cooing, "Maya, don't cry. Mommy's just teasing you." "I want Daddy. Daddy's busy with something. He went back to his hometown. He'll be back in a few days, okay?" "No, no, no, I want to see him now." Maya struggled violently. What Clara hated most was Maya's spoiled, demanding behavior. She watched her daughter's tantrum with a cold, clinical detachment, like a bystander with no emotional investment whatsoever. Even when Maya cried so hard she nearly threw up, Clara just frowned and turned to go upstairs. Everything in the master bedroom was exactly as Leo had left it, including the huge wedding portrait that hung on the wall above the bed. Sometimes Clara didn't understand what she was thinking. When she and Ethan used to break up, she would immediately block his number, delete his contact information, and throw out all of his things in one fell swoop. She wanted every trace of him gone from her world. But with Leo, she didn't throw anything away. It was as if getting rid of his things would be an admission that she had lost. She tried her best to remain emotionally stable, to prove to everyone, and to herself, that Leo's departure had no effect on her. "He's just a man I never loved," she told herself over and over. "For me, this divorce should be a relief." 6 months after the divorce, Ethan asked her if she wanted to get married. Clara was silent for a long moment, then said, "Let's not. Maya was just making a scene about finding him the other day. If I marry you, there's no telling what kind of hell she'll raise." Ethan looked her directly in the eyes and asked, "Is Maya really the only reason you won't marry me?" "What else would it be?" she retorted. Ethan smiled, a hint of mockery in his voice. "Clara, sometimes I'm impressed by you. You even manage to lie to yourself." Clara didn't understand. What had she lied to herself about? When Maya turned 18, Clara was still single, but Leo got married. His new wife was a good person, a kind, gentle woman who was good to Maya too. Maya went to the wedding. Later, at the dinner table, she mentioned it to Clara, saying the atmosphere at the wedding was great. There weren't a lot of guests, but it was lively and full of warmth. Clara just chewed her food in silence, not even bothering to look up from her plate. This was how the mother and daughter usually interacted. There wasn't much affection or real conversation between them, like a typical wealthy family. Plenty of politeness, but no genuine intimacy. So Maya never knew that Clara had also gone to the wedding. Not only had she gone, but she had also brought a gift. A bank card tucked inside a simple envelope. Leo didn't accept it. "Keep it," she had insisted. "I know you don't need this, but it's just a small gesture. There's nothing else I can give you." Leo shook his head. "You don't need to give me anything." He was wearing a simple but elegant suit, nothing like the elaborate, custom-made one from his wedding to Clara, but the smile on his face was much more real, much more brilliant. Clara glanced at him for just a second before looking away. She was afraid that if she looked any longer, she would break down in tears and beg him not to get married, not to abandon her completely. The dressing room was quiet. Someone knocked on the door. "Groom, are you ready? It's time to go on stage." "Ready?" Leo said. He stood up and then asked Clara, "Maya is out there too. Why don't you both stay for dinner before you go?" "No, I can't." Clara shook her head, stood, and walked toward the door first. With her hand on the doorknob, Clara suddenly spoke. "By the way, there's something I never told you." "Hmm?" "I used to be jealous of Maya, and your grandfather." Leo was stunned into silence. "What did you say?" "Everyone said you were crazy in love with me," Clara continued, her voice flat and distant. "But I always felt that in your heart, your grandfather was more important than me. So I was never very happy about that. Then Maya was born, and no matter what you and I were doing, the moment she cried, I completely disappeared from your eyes." "So," Clara said, "I've always kind of hated Maya too. Maybe subconsciously I always wanted all of your attention." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh. "Too bad I wasn't that lucky. So I ended up losing what I already had, too." She paused. "Also, it wasn't a drunken mistake. That night I was completely sober." Clara finally turned back to look at Leo. "If you're ever unhappy in the future, you can call me anytime. But if you're happy, don't tell me. You know me. I'm not a good person. Seeing you happy with someone who isn't me, I'd probably be tempted to ruin it." From the first day that gentle programmer had shown up in Leo's life, Clara knew. The destructive, possessive urge inside her instantly broke free. She was like an ugly insect, lurking in the shadows, plotting to destroy Leo's second chance at happiness. But Leo's smile, it was so beautiful. He looked so happy. Not personally witnessing Leo's wedding to that woman was the greatest blessing Clara could possibly offer him. Was she sad? Yes. Did she have regrets? Yes. But no matter how sad, no matter how much regret she felt, in this lifetime, this was as far as she and Leo would ever go. Clara remembered the first time she met him. Her grandfather had sent her to pick up some country bumpkin from the train station, and she really hadn't wanted to go. A second before she saw him, she was still texting her friends, complaining about the chore. But then she looked up, and the moment she saw Leo, standing there looking slightly lost amidst the chaos, she almost forgot how to breathe. He was like a cool, refreshing breeze that swept away all the scorching heat of the city summer, leaving only the gentle chirping of cicadas and the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. The feeling was instantaneous. She did a lot of things she couldn't even explain to herself, her eyes unconsciously lingering on him in every spare moment. By the time she came to her senses, it was too late. There was no going back for them. She had watched as the brilliant light in him slowly dimmed, and the shadows around him grew longer and darker. Back then, she had truly, foolishly believed that he would stay by her side for a lifetime. In a haze, Clara felt like she was dreaming. In the dream, she was back at their wedding day. The officiant was holding a microphone, his voice echoing through the grand hall, asking her, "For richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health. Clara, do you take Leo to be your husband?" She heard her own answer, a clear, confident voice ringing through the years. "I do."